I still remember the day I lost everything. It wasn't a thunderstorm or a car crash. It was a smile. My younger sister, Mincio, standing there in my childhood home, laughing at the man I thought I would marry. "Do you really think you deserve him?" she asked, tilting her head like a cat playing with a dying mouse. Her words were soft, but they cut deeper than any knife. I had given her everything. My inheritance, my family's trust, even my dignity. When I left my fiancé, Jin-hyuk, for her sake, I thought I was doing the right thing. She had always been weak, fragile, the type who needed someone to guide her. I never suspected she would use that vulnerability to trap me. At first, I blamed myself. How could I have been so blind? How could I have sacrificed my entire life for someone who smiled at my misfortune? I replayed that day endlessly, every word, every gesture, every glance. The truth had settled in like a poisonous fog. Mincio had planned it all. The engagement ring I had once worn proudly now lay at the bottom of a box, forgotten and worthless. My family avoided my gaze, their sympathy thinly veiled by a shared disbelief. Jin-hyuk. He didn't even look surprised when I confronted him. His betrayal wasn't dramatic. It was cold, methodical, inevitable. I spent months outside their world, moving to a city that didn't know me, didn't know my pain. I watched them from a distance. Mincio laughing with my ex-fiancé, stepping into my life as if she had a right to it. And yet, in the quiet of my new apartment, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in years. Power. I realized that losing everything was a gift. They had underestimated me, written me off as the obedient, soft-hearted elder sister. But now I was free. Free to plan. Free to take back everything they had stolen. And I would do it with a smile so sweet it would make them sick. The first step was patience. Revenge, I learned, was an art. Hasty moves only made one appear desperate. I would rebuild myself, not just in looks but in influence, in presence, in the subtle ways that control the world. When the time came, I would walk back into their lives, and they would recognize the danger too late. I stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker against the night sky, imagining the life they had stolen from me crumbling in slow motion. Mincio thought she had won, but she hadn't even realized the game had just begun. And as I slipped into my heels that evening, feeling the click of each step on the wooden floor, I whispered into the silence. "You stole my love, my life, my family. Now I'll take your peace." 3 years later, Seoul looked different. Or maybe I did. When I left, I was a broken woman, a shell wearing humility like a punishment. Now, I returned as someone entirely new. Kang Mirae, CEO of Luna Atelier, the rising fashion brand whispered about in high-end circles. No one knew the woman behind the company used to be Kang Mirae, the pitiful elder sister discarded by her family. I'd learned one truth during those 3 years. Money cleanses reputations faster than time. Influence erases the past. I stepped out of the black car parked in front of the Kang Group headquarters, the same building my father once promised would belong to me. The glass doors reflected a stranger. Sleek black hair, scarlet lipstick, and a calm smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Every inch of me screamed power. "Ms. Kang Mirae," the receptionist stammered as I entered. "You have an appointment with Director Kang Mincio?" "Yes," I said, my tone smooth and practiced. "Tell her sister is here." Her eyes widened, but I didn't explain. Let her guess which sister I meant. When Mincio entered the meeting room, her steps faltered. She wore a tailored white suit and a polished expression, but the shock in her eyes betrayed her. I took my time standing, letting her drink in the transformation. "Uni." Her voice trembled, though she quickly corrected herself. "Ms. Kang." "I didn't expect." "That's strange," I interrupted lightly. "I thought you'd be expecting me. After all, your company reached out first for the partnership proposal." Her lips tightened. "I didn't realize Luna Atelier's CEO was your ghost." I smiled, leaning back in my chair. Surprise. For a brief second, I saw it. Fear. The same fear she'd once forced me to wear. She masked it quickly, but I'd caught it, and that was enough. The meeting dragged on, filled with polite smiles and empty words. Business was just a weapon here, each contract another battlefield. I let her think she had control, let her believe she could use this deal to elevate her position in the family conglomerate. When it was over, she stood and forced a smile. "I'm glad you're doing well, Uni." "I am," I replied. And you should be too. You've built quite a life with what used to be mine. Her smile faltered. As she left, I caught my reflection in the window. Cold, composed, victorious. But deep down, I felt a flicker of something else. Not guilt. Not yet. Something quieter, more dangerous. A whisper that reminded me how close I was to becoming exactly like her. That night, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You shouldn't have come back. They'll destroy you again. I stared at the text, the glow illuminating the shadows of my penthouse. I typed my reply slowly, each word deliberate. Then I'll make sure they burn with me. He looked exactly the same, maybe a little softer around the eyes, as if life had finally taught him something I hadn't needed to learn. Jin Hyuk in his tailored suit, hands folded over the mahogany desk, the same slow smile that used to make my knees wobble. Only now, when he smiled, I felt nothing but a pleasant cold. I had rehearsed this meeting 100 times. Not the words, those would come easily, but the rhythm of it, the calculated warmth, the pause that suggested a wound, the look that asked for absolution without begging for it. Revenge wasn't about shouting. It was about making people hand you their own undoing on a silver platter. He rose when I entered, eyes flicking across me as if cataloging what had changed. Mirae, he said, and the name sounded foreign on his tongue. I didn't expect to see you back in Seoul. Congratulations on the success. Thank you. My voice was steady. I hear Luna Atelier's collaboration with Kang Group is going well. He smiled with a professional courtesy. We're pleased. Minseo's initiative has brought a fresh perspective. There it was. Minseo's name slipped into the conversation like a soft invitation. He still spoke of her the way men speak of roses. Pretty, cultivated, easy to admire. My heart used to bloom at that adoration. Now it hardened, and a plan took shape. I didn't show him the box of old memories I carried in my bag. Photographs folded at the corners, a silver locket with our family crest, the engagement ring that had been mine. Instead, I let my eyes linger on his hands. How is she? I asked casually. For Minseo? She's thriving. He watched my face, perhaps looking for a tremor. She's good for the company and for the family. And for you. I tilted my head, letting a sliver of curiosity light my features. He blinked. We're together. The words were a sharp, familiar blade. I'd imagined worse confessions, crueler betrayals. But those two syllables, spoken so plainly, carried an arrogance that made my skin crawl. He had moved on without ceremony. Why would he have waited for something as simple as remorse? You seemed happy enough when you called off the engagement, I said, letting the memory hang between us like a portrait in a silent room. There was a flash in his eyes then, regret, or perhaps guilt. I thought it was best for you. For Minseo. For you, I corrected, and the room tasted like iron. You took what you wanted. He opened his mouth, closed it, as if the truth had lodged somewhere it couldn't find an exit. Mirae, I never meant to hurt you. Of course you didn't. I smiled with a softness I didn't feel. That's the thing about people who hurt others. They never set out to. They just rearrange their lives until everyone else fits their new picture. He leaned forward, an old concern returning to his face. Are you all right? You look different. Different is good, I said lightly. It hides your edges. But I'm not here for therapy, Jin Hyuk. I'm here for a business proposal. His eyes narrowed. Business? Yes. I produced my tablet and tapped the screen. A sleek presentation slid into view. Luna Atelier's proposal to expand into family entertainment venues. A project perfectly positioned to intersect with Kang Group's real estate arm. Your company has assets. Our brand has the clientele. Together, we dominate a market that neither of us could touch alone. He studied the numbers, his professional mask slipping on. This is ambitious. Ambition is an honest thing, I murmured. Unlike certain promises I remember. He laughed then, an uncomfortable sound. You always had a way with words. I also have a way with contracts. I held his gaze. And with people. He excused himself to take a call, leaving me alone in the glass-walled office. I watched him from my seat and imagined the dominoes that would fall when I positioned the right piece in the right place. A well-timed collaboration announcement would thrust Mincio into the center of a spotlight she wasn't prepared for. A misaligned label here, a misquoted interview there. Small things that made reputations fray. Jin-hyuk's presence made sandpaper of my restraint. His compassion for her made me hungry for leverage. When he returned, there was a different air about him. Courteous, but guarded. "I'll run this by the board," he said. "And Mincio, of course." "Run it by her," I said. "Let her feel the wind before it turns." I paused, letting the word hang heavy. Bracing. On the elevator down, I stood pressed against mirrored steel and rehearsed the next move. I would not stab. I would not shout. I would make them trip over their own ambitions. Make Mincio reach for more until both our family's empire and their love unraveled under the strain of her reaching. Outside, the rain had started. Soft. Indifferent. It fell like confetti on the city, each drop erasing tiny marks. It was fitting. Wash away the past. Reveal the skeleton beneath. I adjusted my collar and let a single thought bloom, sharp and bright. Revenge was not a single blaze. It was a slow-lifted fog that revealed the rot beneath. And I had all the time and patience in the world to watch them choke on it. 3 weeks later, Kang Group hosted its annual charity gala, the same event where Mincio had once been introduced as the family's pride and future. The irony wasn't lost on me. Back then, I had stood behind her, the forgotten sister in a pastel gown, smiling politely while my father announced her engagement to Jin-hyuk. Now, I was on the guest list as Kang Mirae, the mysterious designer-entrepreneur the business world couldn't stop talking about. This time, I wasn't background decoration. This time, I was the storm they had invited inside. The hall glittered with chandeliers and whispers. Cameras flashed, laughter rippled like champagne bubbles, and every woman in sight wore desperation disguised as elegance. As I stepped onto the red carpet, a hush followed. Reporters murmured, eyes darting from my black silk dress to the silver hairpin shaped like a crescent moon, Luna Atelier's signature design. Mirae's sigh. Over here. Flashes exploded. I smiled for them, but my gaze was fixed ahead, where Mincio stood. She looked radiant, as always. She wore a diamond choker, my mother's heirloom, and a gown too similar to my own collection's last season design. A deliberate insult, perhaps. Her smile faltered when she saw me. Perfect. Uni, she greeted when I approached. I didn't expect you'd accept the invitation. I was curious, I said lightly. After all, Kang Group always hosts memorable events. Jin-hyuk joined her side, hand at her waist, his expression unreadable. Mirae SSI. I'm glad you came. Likewise, I replied, meeting his eyes. I heard you two are quite the power couple these days. Mincio's fingers tightened slightly against his arm. We try our best. Some of us had to learn how to survive without handouts. Ah, there it was, the bite. The little jab meant to remind me who had won. I laughed softly. Handouts? Oh no, dear sister. I simply learned to create what others begged for. For a second, she blinked, unsure if it was an insult or not. Then, the host announced the start of the event, and the crowd's attention shifted. An hour later, the room dimmed for the charity auction. Kang Group's way of flaunting wealth disguised as generosity. One of the highlighted items caught my attention. A custom Luna Atelier gown, donated by an anonymous benefactor. Anonymous? I hadn't authorized this piece for donation. Someone had gotten their hands on a prototype. When the dress appeared on screen, my blood turned cold. It was my design, the one I had hidden from production because it carried a secret embroidered message inside the hem. The game begins. Mincio was watching me, her lips curling faintly. She had found it. I smiled instead of flinching. Ah, I murmured, sipping my champagne. How thoughtful of my sister to contribute my work to charity. Even thieves can be generous. Jin-hyuk's head turned slightly at that, but before he could speak, I leaned closer and whispered, You should remind her that stolen things have a way of turning on their owners. Then I placed my glass down and walked to the stage as the auctioneer's voice boomed. Next, a Luna Atelier original. Starting bid, 10 million won. I lifted my paddle. 20 million. Gasps spread through the crowd. Mincio's expression hardened. The bidding war that followed was short. She tried to outbid me twice before realizing she couldn't win without looking desperate. When I finally claimed the gown for a ridiculous price, applause filled the room. I smiled, collected my item, and whispered to her as I passed. "You should have known, Mincio. I always pay for what's mine. And now, even your sin belongs to me." Later that night, I stood on the balcony overlooking the city lights, the dress box resting on the railing beside me. The embroidered message gleamed faintly under the moonlight. "The game begins." It had been meant as a secret warning for myself, a reminder that every battle must start with elegance. Now it felt like a prophecy. My phone buzzed. A message. "Unknown. You provoked the wrong people tonight." I typed back slowly. "Mirae." Then they should have chosen the right sister. And I hit send, smiling as fireworks exploded over Seoul, lighting up the night like applause for the first move in a very long game. Morning sunlight slipped through the blinds of my penthouse, slicing through the stillness. The city was already awake, horns, chatter, ambition humming in the air, but I stayed seated at the marble counter, sipping espresso and watching the notifications pile up on my phone. Every major business site had one headline. Mystery CEO outbids Kang heir at charity gala. Is a power shift coming to Kang Group? Perfect. I had only needed one night to plant the seed. A rumor, a whisper, a question no one could ignore. And I knew exactly how those whispers would reach my father. By noon, I was at the Kang estate. The same mansion I once called home now looked smaller somehow, suffocating beneath its own pretense of grandeur. The guards bowed when they saw me. They didn't recognize my face, only the weight of my name. Father's secretary led me to his study. The smell of old books and polished wood hit me before I even saw him. Kang Doyan, my father, was still the same. Stern, calculating, the kind of man who never raised his voice because his silence was enough to crush. "Mirae," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Or should I say CEO Kang?" "Whichever makes you more comfortable," I replied smoothly. He studied me for a long moment, his fingers tapping the desk. "You made quite the spectacle last night. Bidding against your sister in public." "In business," I interrupted, "there's no such thing as family. Only opportunity." His mouth twitched. Amusement or warning, I couldn't tell. "Mincio is embarrassed. You humiliated her in front of our partners." I tilted my head. "Then perhaps she should be more careful when claiming what isn't hers." His eyes sharpened. "Still, I have to wonder. Why return now? After everything, after cutting yourself off, why stir trouble? Because you all made me into this. Because I bled for your pride." While she smiled. I smiled faintly. "Because I finally have something worth showing. I built Luna Atelier from the ground up. No family name, no inheritance. And I thought maybe," I let my voice soften, perfectly rehearsed, "our family could benefit from what I've learned." That last line caught his attention, as I knew it would. Father valued one thing above all else: results. He stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "Mincio will inherit Kang Group someday. If you wish to contribute, do it through her. Don't compete with her." "I don't compete," I said quietly. "I win." He turned then, eyes narrowing, and for a split second I saw it. Not anger. Recognition. He'd built empires. He understood predators when he saw one. By evening, the gossip had spread through the company corridors like perfume. The chairman met privately with Mirae. "Maybe he's reconsidering the succession plan. Mincio's position isn't as secure as she thinks." I didn't need to say a word. The whispers worked faster than I ever could. Still, I wanted to make sure the right people heard them. So I called an old acquaintance, Yoon Hanul, Kang Group's PR director and my former college classmate. Mirae, she corrected quickly, her voice cautious. "It's been years. Too long," I said with a polite smile she couldn't see. "Let's have dinner. I have something you'll want to hear." When we met that night, she was all nerves and curiosity. We dined at a quiet restaurant overlooking the river. Elegant, expensive, forgettable to most but not to people who mattered. "I heard your sister wasn't happy last night," she began delicately. "Mincio rarely is, when she's not the center of attention." I sipped my wine. "Tell me, Hanul, how loyal are you to her?" Her fork froze midair. "Excuse me. I'm offering you a chance," I continued, lowering my voice. Soon, Luna Atelier will announce a partnership with another conglomerate. One that might eclipse Kang Group's next quarter projections. When that happens, those who stood beside me will rise with me. Her eyes widened. Are you saying? I'm saying, I interrupted gently, that you should decide which Kang sister has the brighter future. A long silence stretched between us before she finally whispered, You haven't changed much, have you? No, I said, smiling faintly. I just stopped apologizing for being smarter. That night, as I stood by my window, watching the city shimmer beneath the clouds, I felt something I hadn't in years. Momentum. The cracks had begun to show. Mincio's allies would start questioning her. Father would start testing her. And when the first fracture appeared, I would be ready to widen it. On my desk lay the dress box from the gala. I opened it again, running my fingers along the hem of the gown. The message glimmered under the lamplight. The game begins. I whispered to the reflection in the glass. It's time they all learn that I was never the pawn. I was the player, always. Rain fell hard that evening, the kind of soul rain that turned the skyline into a watercolor painting. I watched the droplets race down the window of my office, each one carrying away the faint reflection of my face. It was almost poetic, how quickly beauty blurred under pressure. And Mincio? She was starting to blur too. That morning, Kang Group's internal memo had leaked, a rumor dressed as an official document. It hinted that Father was reviewing the company's future leadership structure, citing recent market movements and emerging partnerships. Everyone in the upper floors knew what that meant. Someone, meaning me, had made him doubt Mincio. By noon, she had called me 3 times. I didn't answer. By the 4th, I finally picked up. Her voice was sharp. Did you leak the memo? I smiled, though she couldn't see it. I think you give me too much credit, Mincio. I don't need to leak anything. People just talk when they see the truth. The truth, she hissed, is that you're jealous. You can build your little company and play pretend, but you'll never. Never what? I interrupted. Never be the Kang heir? You're right. I don't want Father's crumbling empire. I want the people who tried to bury me to choke on their own foundation. There was silence. I could hear her breathing. Shallow, uneven. Then she whispered, You're not the same sister I knew. You never knew me, I said and hung up. That night, I had a visitor. Jin Hyuk. He looked uneasy standing in my doorway, hair damp from the rain, hands shoved into his pockets. Can I come in? He asked. I let him. Mostly because curiosity is a weakness I haven't yet learned to cure. He followed me into the living room, where the city lights cast soft reflections on the marble floor. Nice place, he murmured. You've done well. I usually do, I said. He hesitated, then exhaled. Mincio's falling apart. She thinks you're trying to destroy her. Is she wrong? I asked lightly, crossing one leg over the other. He didn't answer. That silence was answer enough. Why are you here, Jin Hyuk? To understand. His voice was low. You used to care about her. About all of us. I don't recognize you anymore. That's because you never looked at me, I replied. You looked through me, at what I could offer, at what I could surrender. You loved the version of me that made your life easier. He swallowed hard. Maybe I deserve that. But Mirae. Don't call me that like you know me. He took a step closer. Then tell me what you want. Revenge? Is that really enough? For a moment, the old ache flickered, the ghost of love, of shared laughter in a time before betrayal. But ghosts have no power unless you let them. I don't want revenge, I said finally. I want justice in a language you all understand. Loss. He flinched. You're turning into the thing you hated. I smiled faintly. Maybe. But isn't that what you all taught me? He was quiet for a long time before saying, You're playing a dangerous game. And if you keep pushing, she'll fight back harder than you think. I tilted my head. Good. I want her to. He exhaled. Defeated. You haven't changed. You've just hidden your heart better. Then maybe you should stop looking for it, I said softly. He left without another word. But as the door closed, I saw him glance back once, and in that glance I saw hesitation. Regret. Weakness. Useful weakness. The next morning, my assistant forwarded me an internal email. Mincio had made a reckless move. She'd ordered an immediate audit of the partnership contracts between Kang Group and Luna Atelier. Her goal was obvious: discredit me, find flaws, expose a scandal. But she had no idea that the documents she was about to dig into were written by the very legal team I now controlled through quiet acquisitions and bribes disguised as consulting fees. I leaned back in my chair, tracing my fingertip along the rim of my coffee cup. "She's panicking," my assistant said. "She's dancing," I corrected. "I just need to pick the song." That night, I received another text, the same unknown number as before. "Unknown. You're not the only one playing the game." I typed back slowly. "Mirae, good. It's boring to play alone." I put my phone down and looked out at the glittering skyline. The city was vast, restless, merciless, just like me. Somewhere out there, Mincio was plotting her next move. And somewhere inside me, the last piece of compassion I'd ever had cracked quietly in two. The next round of the game had begun. The message replayed in my head all night. "If she threatens this family, remove her." Those words weren't a warning. They were a verdict. I had always known my father loved order more than blood. Still, hearing it said aloud felt like a door closing behind me. By dawn, I'd already decided what to do. If they were going to make me an enemy, then I'd stop pretending to be family. At Luna Atelier's headquarters, the morning meetings buzzed with unease. The leak had shaken everyone. Whispers followed me through the corridors. Words like sabotage and spy tucked behind polite smiles. Hanul was waiting in my office, eyes tired, tablet in hand. "I traced the breach deeper," she said. "It wasn't just the legal division. Someone inside Luna gave them access." I met her gaze. "Who?" She hesitated. "J1. Your operations manager. He met with a Kang Group executive last week, off the books." J1. I'd hired him myself. Smart, loyal, efficient, or so I'd believed. "Do we have proof?" "Not enough for court," she admitted, "but enough to make him panic." "Good," I said quietly. "Panic makes people talk." By noon, I called for a full team briefing. Every manager sat around the conference table, the air thick with tension. I stood at the head, calm, composed, my expression unreadable. "We've had a breach," I began. "Someone in this room decided to sell us to our enemies. I won't ask why. Greed, fear, family, it doesn't matter. What matters is this: Luna Atelier doesn't break." I let the silence stretch, watching faces shift, some guilty, some indignant. Finally, I looked at J1. "Would you like to explain where you were last Friday night?" His face went pale. "What are you implying, CEO Kang?" "I don't imply," I said softly. "I verify." The presentation screen behind me flickered to life. Security footage from the lobby of a five-star hotel. J1, shaking hands with Director CO. A few people gasped. "You disappoint me," I said, my voice even. "I gave you trust. You gave me betrayal." He stammered something about misunderstandings, about routine meetings, but his words drowned beneath the weight of silence. "Effective immediately," I said. "You're on suspension. Leave your badge with HR." He stood abruptly, muttering curses as he left, and when the door closed, I turned to the rest. "Anyone else who's tempted to pick a side, remember who built this company from ashes. Remember who taught you how to survive." No one spoke after that. When the meeting ended, Hanul lingered. "That was risky," she said. "Publicly humiliating him might make things worse." I smiled faintly. "Or it might remind them that I'm not a victim anymore." That afternoon, my phone rang. An unknown number again. "You're moving too fast," the distorted voice said. "They're tightening their circle. Your father's ordered an internal investigation. Not into Mincio, into you. He's calling it a moral audit." "Let them audit," I said. "I've kept every record clean." "Not the kind of records they're looking for." The line went dead. For the first time in weeks, my hand trembled slightly as I set the phone down. They were coming for my reputation. The one currency that couldn't be rebuilt once destroyed. That night, I met Jinhyuk again. This time not by accident. He'd been trying to avoid me since the rooftop event, but guilt makes men predictable. I asked him to meet me at a small tea house in Samcheong-dong, the kind of quiet place that makes honesty unavoidable. You shouldn't have called, he said as soon as he sat down. I shouldn't have to, I replied. Your board is preparing a case against me. You're one of the few who still has influence there. He looked tired. You think I can stop this? Your sister's desperate, Mirae. She's convinced you'll ruin her. Then she's finally right about something. He sighed. This will destroy both of you. Only one of us deserves to burn. He hesitated, studying my face. You know, for a second, I almost believe you're doing this for justice. But part of you, he paused. Part of you still wants them to love you again, doesn't it? The words hit harder than I wanted to admit. Love. What a fragile, useless word. I leaned forward. If love built the walls that trapped me, then I'd rather live outside them. He reached for his cup, but his hand was shaking. Then I'll warn you once for old time's sake. Minceo's preparing something public. A press conference. She's going to paint you as the unstable one. Obsessed, vindictive, dangerous. My pulse slowed. Of course she was. Then I'll give her a stage, I said quietly. And I'll make sure the whole world sees who she really is. When I returned to my office, I stood before the massive window overlooking the city, lights bleeding into the glass like constellations. Behind me on the desk, my father's voice echoed faintly from a saved recording, the words I'd played over and over since morning. If she threatens this family, remove her. I closed my eyes. You can't remove what's already gone, Appa. You killed Yura years ago. Now all that's left is Mirae, and she doesn't die easily. Outside, thunder rolled over Seoul. Inside, I began drafting the press release that would turn their next attack into their undoing. The game had entered its next phase. And this time, I would stop playing fair. The press conference was scheduled for 11 in the morning. By 10:30, every major news outlet in Seoul had a camera pointed at the Kang Group auditorium. Reporters crowded the hall, microphones waiting like spears. The invitation had gone out under Minceo's name. The headline everyone expected was simple. Kang Group addresses false accusations by rival CEO. What they didn't know was that I had received the same invitation. Not as Kang Mirae the rival, but as Kang Yura, the discarded sister. She wanted to expose me. I planned to let her. I arrived late enough to be noticed, early enough to control the narrative. The moment I entered, the flashbulbs went off, voices rose. Luna Atelier's CEO attends her sister's conference. Minceo was already on stage, immaculate in white, her voice steady as she read from the prepared statement. While we value competition, we cannot stand by while personal vendettas threaten our company's integrity. My sister, Kang Yura, now calling herself Mirae, has repeatedly attempted to interfere with Kang Group's business. Gasps rippled through the crowd. She'd said it, sister. The admission she had tried for years to bury. I waited until her eyes met mine before stepping forward. Security hesitated, but I smiled, lifted my press badge, courtesy of a sympathetic reporter, and walked down the aisle. Minceo faltered mid-sentence. If I may, I said, taking the spare microphone from a startled assistant, it's only fair the accused speak for herself. The room erupted. Every lens turned toward us. Two sisters on the same stage. One dressed in innocence, the other in black. Light and shadow, bound by blood and betrayal. I'm not here to deny anything, I began. Yes, I'm Kang Yura. I built Luna Atelier from nothing after this family abandoned me. And yes, my company now threatens Kang Group's dominance. But what my sister calls a vendetta, I call accountability. Minceo's composure cracked. You're twisting everything. You lied to investors. I raised a hand. Did I? Or did your department leak confidential documents to manufacture a scandal? A few reporters gasped. Her lips parted, but I continued before she could recover. I have the audit records, I said, tapping my tablet. Digital logs showing access to our private servers from Kang Group's legal division. I could release them now. But I'd rather you tell them yourself, Minceo. After all, honesty runs in our blood, doesn't it? She took a step back. You forged that. I don't need to forge the truth. The crowd murmured again, Reporters scrambling to record every word. Enough, she snapped, voice breaking. You've always envied me. That's all this is. Envy. I smiled sadly. Maybe once. But envy dies the moment you realize the person you envied has nothing real left to lose. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the cameras seemed to pause, as if the entire city were holding its breath. Then, quietly, I said the one thing she wasn't prepared for. Do you remember the day Father chose you? The way he said I wasn't strong enough to protect the family name? You proved him right in one way. You've spent your whole life protecting the name, not the people behind it. Mincio's eyes glistened. You don't understand what it's like to be loved for what you can't ever stop being. I understand perfectly, I said. That's why I stopped trying to be loved. And with that, I set my tablet on the podium and turned the screen toward the press. A video began to play, a recording of Father's voice from his office. If she threatens this family, remove her. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed like lightning. Mincio froze, realization flooding her face. She knew exactly when that conversation had been recorded, and that it exposed them both. I didn't need to say another word. I simply placed the microphone down and walked out. Outside, the air was bright, painfully fresh. Behind me, chaos erupted. Shouts, cameras, the sound of reputation shattering. But for the first time in years, I felt still. Hanul met me at the car, breathless. You really did it, she whispered. You destroyed her. I shook my head. No. I just told the truth. It destroyed itself. As the driver pulled away, Seoul blurred past the window, a city of glitter and ghosts. Somewhere behind the noise, I could still hear Mincio's voice, young again, calling me Uni like she used to. I closed my eyes. The game was over. And winning suddenly didn't feel like victory. Just silence. Months had passed since the press conference. Seoul had moved on, as it always does. Ruthless, indifferent, and fast. But the ripples of that day had changed everything. Luna Atelier thrived. Our collaboration with international investors had skyrocketed, bringing attention, prestige, and influence far beyond what Mincio had ever imagined. The scandal had painted her as unstable, her once loyal allies had quietly shifted sides, and the board now treated me not as a rival, but as a force that could not be ignored. From my penthouse, I could see the city spread beneath me like a chessboard, every street a move, every light a pawn, every shadow a secret. I'd built my empire not just on ambition, but on the lessons betrayal had taught me. Mincio had retreated. The public had judged her harshly, the family name no longer her shield. She remained in the company, but her influence had waned. Every decision she made was questioned, second-guessed. Even Father had begun to see her fragility, though he never admitted it aloud. I didn't gloat. Revenge had been sweet, yes, but it was hollow when measured against the years I had lost. I visited her once, quietly, without cameras or witnesses. She looked smaller somehow, a fragile shadow of the sister I had once loved. Yura, she whispered, her voice trembling. She still called me that, the name of the sister she had betrayed, not the woman who had returned to take everything. I'm Mirae now, I said softly. And I don't live in the past anymore. Her eyes filled with tears, but there was no apology. Not yet. Perhaps never. I reached out, touched her shoulder lightly, and let my hand fall. You'll survive. I hope you learn from this. And then I left. Jin Hyuk had come back into my life in a cautious way. No promises, no confessions, just recognition. He had seen what I had become and respected it. There was no romance, no regret, only understanding. Some connections are not meant to heal, only to witness. Father's office remained the same. The books, the polished wood, the quiet authority. But now when I visited, it was on my terms. He respected me, or at least feared the consequences of underestimating me. He had learned, late as always, that the eldest daughter had always been the one with the sharpest claws. One evening, I stood on the rooftop of my atelier, the wind tugging at my hair, the lights of Seoul stretching endlessly before me. I thought of the past, the betrayal, the humiliation, the lost years. And I thought of the future, a life where I answered to no one, where I shaped my own story, where I was finally free. The city hummed beneath me, indifferent yet alive, a mirror of my own heart, resilient, unyielding, untamed. I smiled. The game was over. But the player? She was just getting started. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.